You're listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Ben Munson. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email us, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Ben at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Subscribe to our daily newsletter and subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine to make sure you get a notification so you can join us live every Thursday, typically at 1:30. Sometimes we push it back as a result of a meeting that gets canceled, but either way, we're here and it's a good time. How you doing this week, Jeff?
Good. I wonder if when we start off, if there's a wide shot, because sometimes I'll be looking at my notes and you're going through and you come in like a starter pistol.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's just like, boom, here we go. Mm-hmm. And it just like, I swear I do like an automatic, like a registered jolt.
It's like a switch.
Man, so thank you for that. I'm not being critical of your voice volume. I appreciate you getting me going here.
Everyone in the office knows when the camera's on and I'm talking, and I apologize. No, Ben, thank you very much for joining us today. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. Yeah. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be back, or great to have you back. And, Anna's on vacation, so there is like that tinge of jealousy. But she's also been on vacation with small children for nearly a week, so who knows where she's at right now.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they could be somewhere really nice and warm, but she's still having a terrible time because the kids
Either
are
way,
there.
she's like at least 3 bottles of wine in, right?
Oh, or what? Yes, 3 bottles of
3.
X. Yeah. All right. Well, before we get started with our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor, BigCommerce. And we're back. And just a reminder that BigCommerce provides modern e-commerce technology that works with your existing systems. ERP, OMS, CRM, no problem. Whatever existing business tools and technologies you use today, BigCommerce can integrate using pre-built one-click integrations or customize your automation with its APIs. Make the move to BigCommerce today. Our first story this week. Safety device and human error derailed Washington train. Deraillers are safety devices embedded in railroad tracks and located on both sides of a bridge. If the bridge is open, the device should force trains off the tracks. Well, last Thursday, a 7-car BNSF train departed from an oil refinery and was approaching a bridge over the Swinomish Channel in Washington State. Just
nailed it.
Crushed it out of
Killed
the park.
it. Yep.
The bridge was ready for the train to cross, but at least one derailleur was still working. The train's wheels hit the steel wedge derailleur, came off the tracks, and spilled 3,100 gallons of diesel fuel. According to a Federal Railroad Administration investigation, the accident happened because neither the BNSF bridge tender nor the 2-person train crew followed procedures, despite the train engineer's many years of experience. Human error and poor track conditions are the leading causes of rail accidents in the United States. As of last Saturday, crews had removed more than 2,100 cubic yards of diesel-contaminated soils and pumped out 4,300 gallons of contaminated groundwater, all near a tribal reservation. Jeff, BNSF is on the hook for the costs, and it just sounds like we're hearing a lot about train derailments lately.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. First of all, swinging bridges.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize these were still as prominent as they are. I mean, there's still hundreds of these things, functional, operational, throughout the U.S., so that kind of caught my attention initially. I guess I don't know.
So what's a swinging bridge?
So my understanding is basically there's a pivot in the middle, so the bridge swings open. So because this must be a frequently frequent maritime channel as well. There must be boats and ships going in and out of there, so they must have to swing to allow them to get through, swing it back for the railroad to pass.
Okay.
My understanding of the situation. I was surprised, again, that there's still this many of them, I guess. But there is. So
well, we got that covered.
So the last part of your comment is last part of the story is kind of what caught my attention in terms of either looking at bad rail conditions or human error. So looking at rail conditions, I was actually really surprised. According to the American Society of Civil Engineers, rail actually has the highest grade of any piece of infrastructure in our country.
Oh, that is disheartening.
It gets a B.
That's the highest.
And that's the best grade for anything. Like we're talking about energy, bridges, roads. Yeah.
No,
so,
like water.
Yeah.
That's not good.
So, yeah. You can go, I don't know what you do with that either, but in this case, it kind of reinforces the fact that this most likely was human error.
Yeah.
There was some issues there. And what this reminded me of as well is, I don't know, probably like 12, 18 months ago, we were doing a lot of stories on container ships and cargo ships catching fire, tipping over, a lot of issues surrounding maritime transport. Now, in the last 6 months, we've seen a lot of these plane derailments. I think train derailments, excuse me. A plane derailment, that would be a challenge. These train derailments. And I think there's some similarities there in terms of the operating environment. There's supply chain challenges, pressures that are being placed on these modes of transport right now, just like there was with the container ships, in terms of getting stuff to the end destination as quickly as possible. This was coming from an oil refinery, so you can definitely appreciate the demand and the price element that could be involved in getting the oil on to where it needed to be on time. So you get that. You also can see that there's been a lot of labor issues. Obviously, we've talked about that a ton in the last 6 months in terms of railroads. So you can see how those converging elements could definitely play a part in people trying to work faster, working longer hours, doing more to try to make up for the situation. And when you have those dynamics converge, there's definitely room for operator error, which seems to be what was the case here. Thankfully, the remediation efforts were put forward very quickly, and it looks like they're doing a good job cleaning it up. But still, I think, hopefully we don't see more of these things, but you could also see with all those factors in place, why we might.
Right. And when it comes to human error, podcasting 101, turn off your phone. I'm sorry, my goodness. So Ben, looking at this story, as Jeff alluded to, at least rail is the best of our country's failing infrastructure.
Yeah, it seems that way. And, it's the best option, I think, for transporting these, hazardous materials, chemicals, that sort of thing, right? I don't know where else you want to try to move these things.
Right.
But it makes me think of something our colleague Andy Zoll said this week, which is like, I think we're just hearing more about train derailments right now because of what happened in Ohio. It's so they're in the media now, and like last year there was almost, I think, 1,200, which is more than that's 3 a day.
Yeah,
we should have plenty of news. We should have been like up to our ears in train derailment stories last year.
Right.
And it just doesn't feel that way. And I think it's the majority of them are not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I looked into that as well. And so, because I was kind of curious about how much coverage it's receiving. But before we get into that, I was interested in the cleanup. Because this Federal Railroad Administration, basically FAA of rail, because that's just, something that I'm more familiar with. But so the FRA sent an official just to monitor the cleanup. That was one thing that kind of blew my mind because no one was hurt and there wasn't a fire or an explosion. This derailment actually didn't meet the FRA's threshold to even conduct a full investigation. That was kind of surprising to me. It's like something went off the rails as a result of human error and
carrying a flammable substance.
Yeah.
What's the threshold? Is it just not enough diesel fuel spilled?
I think it is injury, or if it would have caught fire or exploded, there would have been a full investigation. But essentially, they just have to send somebody on the site and be like, "You guys are cleaning that all up, right?" Good, because people, live right on the other side of that one. Now, according to the U.S. Bureau of Transportation Statistics, every year, at least 44 million tons of hazardous material moves through Washington state alone. So Ben, to your point about it still being the best way to move it, they're still moving a lot of it. Now, also to Andy Zoll's point, it is certainly top of interest because just yesterday, if you guys remember, a train hauling ethanol and corn syrup derailed and caught fire in Minnesota early yesterday. Nearby residents were ordered to evacuate their homes, which was in a town called Raymond, which is about 100 miles west of Minneapolis. This also was a BNSF train. So you're right that we did see a lot of them last year, train derailments, but they're up considerably in the U.S. between 2021 and 2022, and it's not looking good for 2022 to 2023. Everstream Analytics, via an article on Market Watch, said trains are becoming longer and heavier while safety regulations have not been updated to meet such changes. So BNSF had 5 derailments in 2018, 10 in 2021, and 17 in 2022. So more than triple or more than double what it had in 2018. It's already had 2 this year. Norfolk Southern and Union Pacific also had huge increases over that time frame. But one kind of encouraging thing that I saw is Anna has brought this up on the podcast quite a bit is they're cutting back safety standards on trains, talking about going down to a 1-person crew. And at least it seems like the 2, Union Pacific and I think Norfolk, both backed off on that this week. Right. So at least there's some good news when it comes to a few more of these safety measures. Like, did you see one of the solution was? Instead of having people on the train, they wanted to have people on a truck as it went from state to state, just like checking in. It was just like, no, we don't need anyone on the train. We'll just have a truck nearby in case anything goes wrong, and they just jump on. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think these rail operators are shouldering like most of the blame right now? And is that entirely fair? I mean,
I think yes and no, because you mean in terms of the infrastructure kind of not working as needed, or
yeah, and in this latest one we're talking about right now, it's human error, but this was the bridge operator.
Yeah,
that's maybe on them, and that's not necessarily part of BNSF, right?
I think there was shared blame there. Just kind of a communication breakdown. But.
Yeah, no, agreed. Like I do think. And maybe they're shouldering more of the blame right now because of the scene that we've seen coming out of Ohio in terms of a lot of times we wind up talking about this on the podcast, right? Where it comes down to communication. If you share with people how dangerous the situation is, exactly what happened, it seemed like BNSF with this situation in particular, and maybe they were more forthcoming because it wasn't as crazy of an accident. It seemed like they came out with a lot of information as to how everything was being remediated immediately versus in Ohio where they're just like, no, you're fine. Everything's fine. The chemicals in the air that are coating your car as you drive are fine. Oh, the fact that you lose your breath walking in the door, that's fine too. Continue sleeping here. Keep your kids. I think that's maybe some of the operators in the industry cultivated that distrust that they're kind of running into right now.
Okay.
One man's opinion.
It sounds good.
All right. Well,
that's all we go for here.
Our next most popular story this week, Cultivated meat maker cooks up woolly mammoth meatball. Vow is a Australian cultivated meat company. The company recently unveiled the Mammoth meatball, created from the DNA of the extinct woolly mammoth and completed with fragments of African elephant DNA. The project serves as a proof of concept for Vow's mission to, quote, invent entirely new meats that have never existed before. Vow recently opened a cultivated meat facility and raised close to $50 million. Cultivated meat competitors have thus far struggled to scale production, though McKinsey & Company estimates the global cultivated meat market could be worth up to $25 billion in just 7 years. Last year, the FDA officially signed off on cultivated meat being safe for human consumption. No one has eaten this woolly mammoth meatball yet, and the company kind of isn't sure about how the human body is going to take it or process it. There are some questions around eating extinct meat. The company says cultured meat is genuine animal meat grown from the cells of animals using innovative molecular technology. But Jeff, is it?
Why?
Yeah.
Why? What is this about? I don't understand this.
Yeah.
I understand what they're trying to do in terms, I guess, getting headlines or whatever.
Well, they got 'em.
Yeah, but then when you start digging in and you see somebody couldn't even eat this because they're not sure what impact it would have on a digestive system, that sort of takes away any grounds you would have for becoming a reputable food company.
Yeah.
In my book.
Or making
if you're-
people feel more comfortable about eating lab meat. It's like, no, all of our other lab meat is great. Don't eat this one.
Yeah, don't touch this one.
Don't touch the mammoth meatball.
I mean, that's what we wanted you to look at us for, but yeah, no, never mind.
Yeah.
I'm still struggling with this whole cultivated meat product. Okay, I'm still not clear as to who it's targeted towards.
Yeah.
Because if you are somebody who does like to eat red meat and you have one of these, you're going to be disappointed.
Correct.
Okay, it's not the same. It doesn't taste bad, but it's not really an equal substitute. Same thing, like you brought in those chicken nuggets that time.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of like the vegetarians were just clamoring over it. If you've had chicken lately, it didn't taste the same.
You're
it
right.
just wasn't. So I understand there's environmental elements here in terms of trying to reduce the number of cows that are being raised and slaughtered and all of that, and all the, the waste product that's involved and all the, environmental issues surrounding that. But if we're going to cut down on beef production, that's one route to take. Going this way, I just don't get it. And I think I'm not alone, because when you look at stuff, Impossible and Beyond are the two biggest cultivated meat manufacturers. Okay. And they're both struggling right now.
Right.
Impossible laid off a fair number of people last year. Beyond is losing like 10% of the revenues, and they're still not profitable. They're a publicly traded company, so we can see all that. Impossible is not, but they're much smaller. And they're claiming increased retail sales and restaurant sales. But again, it feels like now that we're out of the pandemic, consumers are kind of going, nah, not so much, especially because, man, that stuff's expensive.
Yeah.
When you go and you price it, compare like the Beyond brats, like they got for my wife last summer, versus some Johnsonville's, it's not even close in terms of comparison there. So I don't know. I was struggling with so many elements of this story, because I get why it's interesting, but then when you see that vowed, you couldn't even eat the stuff, and they're trying to make waves in a market that seems to be fading.
They didn't price the woolly mammoth meatball, but I would imagine that it carries a premium. I think what they're trying to do there is kind of draw a line between this extinct animal and what they deem as like a possible extinction event. It climate change, and they're pointing out mass farming production as kind of a cause of what's going on right now. And I think it was an interesting marketing stunt.
Oh, it worked.
Yeah. And they did a great job presenting everything.
They even, right out of the Jurassic Park playbook, showed the woolly mammoth DNA missing the section and then replacing that section with the elephant DNA.
And they did it without like a hint of irony. You know? But they're not making woolly mammoths. They're just making whatever chunk of a woolly mammoth you might need to make this meatball. And I gotta say, I want to eat the meatball. I know they're being
You can't.
I know they're being cautious.
Yeah.
But it looks good. And
large.
yeah, and big and meaty, and like, yes, this sounds great. And it's weird too, because there's companies like this that are doing lots of kind of interesting stuff with cultivated meat, right? They make a woolly mammoth meatball, right? But they're also can maybe make like a zebra meat. And I don't feel as good about eating something like that, because it's still around. Next time I go to the zoo, there's zero chance I'm going to see a woolly mammoth, but there's a really good chance I may see zebras. And while my decision to eat their lab-grown meat didn't negatively affect any zebras, I think they're still within their right to think what I did is a little messed up, if they're capable of that. But it just kind of presents an interesting moral question about lab-grown meat.
I think a lot of questions come around with lab-grown meat. One is this sort of, it's an intersection between people that are against big farms and meat consumption, as well as the same crowd that kind of seems to be against overly processed foods. And I mean, when it comes to processed foods, like lab grown meat is number one, right? In terms of being a processed food. The other thing is, and I'm with you, like I want to taste this thing. If, I'm running at this thing with a fork and they'll slap it away and say, no, but your stomach, I'll be like, it's garbage already. And just dive in with my hands. I also wondered
But wouldn't you rather just have a beef and pork meatball?
Oh yeah. Completely agree. But I mean, so that's what, I see the intrigue of this. So I kind of was curious about, to what end, because I could see this being like, it reminded me of like those rogue jerky stands that you would see at county fairs where all of a sudden it was like alligator jerky and, ostrich jerky. And the allure of that was enough to get me to buy one, but it's not like I, add protein to my lunch with ostrich jerky.
Well, and that's where I think a lot of these companies saw that uptick, like especially during the pandemic.
Agreed.
We're like, man, we're eating at home for like, the umpteenth straight day in a row. Let's get something different here and throw this on and try it out. But then you try it and you're a little bit like, all right, it's fine, I guess.
And I get it. They're like a first mover. And I mean, sure, if we were 5 years away from Soylent Green, the prospect of lab-grown meat would probably be great. But right now, when you have options, and I still think that the biggest difference is that as consumers, you need to make a more sustainable choice individually. The way I purchase meat is more sustainable through sustainable farms, buying an entire, not all of it, but most of my meat. We need to get consumers to make better decisions that way. And I think it could really start to make some change.
So I want to ask both of you guys, but do you both feel like this was a successful marketing campaign?
I do. Absolutely. I mean, it got them on the map, and I had never heard of Val before, and now they're top of mind.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting marketing campaign, and it certainly resonated with people. I don't know what it's going to do for the company, and they haven't actually put out their first consumer product yet. They're saying, I think, at some point this year, and I don't know what that's going to be because they've basically stated that their mission is to, I think, invent entirely new meats that have never existed before.
Yeah, and so that made... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Like, it made me think of this dystopian landscape where we're eating, like, raptor steaks and human sliders, where it's like, whoa, I'm not a cannibal.
You just threw human slider
Well, yeah,
in there.
because it's not... Are you a cannibal if it's lab-grown human meat?
Oh, dude.
I'm just saying, like, it's a weird box of worms, and you could have worm meat.
You just made it weirder.
I know, but it's like, it made me think of how people are going to, want to go to this latest pop-up downtown because they're serving raptor sliders. And, don't worry, it's completely lab-grown.
I think startups need to be careful with these types of marketing campaigns. We need to go out some of these crazy prototype cars. It feels different because there you're looking at technologies we know about that they're going to somehow combine and bring together for a vehicle. Here you're talking about something, and yes, it gets your attention with that headline. But once you start digging in, you're going, wait, so you haven't actually done this yet?
Thanks.
And you can't actually eat the thing you did make.
Yeah.
I actually think it had more of a negative impact on me personally than anything else.
No, I could definitely see that. It's but I think if this is not a company, if this is a university, do you have a different outlook?
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
Okay. Like if these are university students that make a Mammoth meatball, you're like, okay, we're headed somewhere. Yeah.
Okay.
You had mentioned Impossible, and I just wanted to bring up a little bit about them because there was a recent Bloomberg article that called fake meat a fad. And it turns out the Impossible Burger CEO, Peter McGinnis, did not appreciate that statement. He came out and said, quote, "We're not a fad or a flop. We're just getting started, as is this category." And I would say the category is definitely just getting started, but I feel like it was a fad and it has flopped, but that doesn't mean it can't come back. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have a future. It's just right now, that's where it stands. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, it's been a fairly niche category for a long time. I was a vegetarian for 7 years, and I ate a lot of meat replacements because I had eaten those, beforehand. Yeah. And some were really good, some weren't so good. Yeah. Some were pretty bad. Some were really gross.
Yeah.
But it definitely has evolved lately. Turning beet juice into blood or whatever you want to call it. But I don't know if that adds to it or not, but I think it's just maybe one of those emerging categories that's experiencing some sort of, kind of growing pains.
Yeah, and it's, to Jeff's point, you're pulling people that are looking for a meat substitute you're not pulling as many. You're pulling people that are interested, that are meat eaters, but are maybe not reoccurring customers. McGinnis said that he says the issue is market penetration because his company has only been in 5% of households. So he's like, look at this opportunity where you have 95% of households to get into. But Jeff, to your point, like, he got into my household.
Yeah, and stay there.
Yeah, no, once.
I mean, I'm a dedicated, hardcore, enthusiastic meat eater. Okay,
Yeah.
I will take a bean-based burger.
Oh yeah,
over any of this stuff.
No, that's a really good point. There's a lot of good bean burgers.
And maybe that's why they're not letting people taste this woolly mammoth meatball, because it's like,
it's just that bad.
It's maybe so good. The demand will go through the roof. And I don't know how they scale production of this thing.
Just not scalable.
You are the ultimate glass half full guy, man. Attaboy.
I mean, but if they could produce this, just imagine, even if it was fleeting, imagine the explosion of sales. Where if all of a sudden this comes out and then tomorrow they're like, and on sale at your local grocery store. I mean, everyone would buy one.
Yeah, if they can find a partner, it's like,
Yeah.
who's not going to go to McDonald's
Yeah, and then
for the mammoth burger?
so the mammoth meatball is the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. That's it right there. All right, they just couldn't digest, and
It's
they
not
turned
going to
into
be mushrooms.
No. All right. Well, our next most popular story this week, GM to stop making the Camaro. Another day, another classic approaching a dead end. General Motors will halt production on the Chevy Camaro early next year, and the car's prospects are unknown. GM says the last of the 2024 model year of the cars will come off the assembly line in Lansing, Michigan in January. According to GM, this is not the end of the Camaro, more of a rest stop. The company stopped short of announcing an immediate successor, but Scott Bell, who is the vice president of Chevy, said, quote, "This is not the end of Camaro's story. At least, as of last year, it looks like the car sales finally bottomed out." So, Ben, are you ready for the electric Camaro?
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, maybe. Yeah. I don't know if I'd get it. This seemed like kind of an interesting announcement because GM was being kind of purposely cagey about the future of the Camaro.
Yeah.
And that seems almost a little disingenuous.
Yeah.
Because it's the Camaro. They're not going to be like, well, this one, this one's ran its,
Yeah.
the story's over here.
They're not dancing on the grave.
I don't think there's any more legs left in this brand. Like it's a pretty cool brand.
Yeah.
It's, I think it's going to stick around, but it makes sense that the current generation is coming to a close, at least in terms of, the decline in sales they've seen since it launched in 2016. I think it was down 70% by 2021, which could just mean they're making them too good. They gotta make cars that just, after 3 or 4 years, but
They consider the market for Camaro saturated.
yeah,
I just love the positive outlook that Ben is bringing to all this stuff. This is fantastic.
They made 'em
meatballs,
too well.
Camaros, they're all really great. It's cool stuff. But maybe they're being cagey just because they don't have a real clear view of what the next Camaro is going to look like. But I think you guys are right. It's going to be an EV.
Yeah. Jeff, we've seen this trend kind of be popular with Mustang, which Camaro came out as a response to the Mustang.
pony car.
So it kind of makes sense that, they see the 2-year backlog for the Mach-E Mustang, and they think, hey, how about a Mach-C Camaro or whatever they're going to call it.
I agree with Ben 100%. I mean, they may not have a clear vision, but we have obviously not seen the last of this brand. It's just too iconic. It's too much a part of Chevy and GM and what they do. And, just echoing what Ben was saying too about sales. I mean, they sold half as many Camaros as they did Mustangs in model year 2022. So, and even it was even closer. A Challenger even sold more than that, more than twice as many. So it was failing in that respect. I think probably a lot of that, though, was production and marketing and things like that. They're obviously caught in this EV push, which makes a ton of sense. So you can see the writing was sort of on the wall. This does make sense, but why not just come out and say, hey, look, this is coming back as an EV. This almost sounds like a wrestling gimmick or something, Oh, yeah. The guy loses a loser leave town match or something because the reality is, he's got a pulled hamstring and needs to sit out a couple months.
Yeah.
I think we've definitely seen, we'll see it again. Reading the story also brought back one of the more interesting memories I had for a while before I started school, before I started college. I was working at a car dealership. One of the general duties I'd have would be moving vehicles from one lot to another. And it was always fun to try to pick out the coolest car that was in the fleet to move to another dealership. So I picked out a Camaro one time. I didn't realize the difference between driving a front and a rear wheel drive vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
So I gassed it up and just tore out of the parking lot, not realizing the back end was going to hit a patch of ice and swing way out into the middle of the other lane.
Oh, man.
And where we were coming, it was a weird intersection because it's one of those where if you're going straight, you don't stop. If you're going around the curve, or excuse me, the other way around. If you're going around the curve, you don't stop. If you're going straight, you do. Well, where I had come and flung out, I was definitely about 3 feet into the other lane. As a truck is coming the other way, I'm 18 and I'm thinking, how am I going to pay for the fact that this truck is going to take up the complete back end of this car because I just, basically fishtailed out in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah.
Literally missed by inches. I think maybe even taken a little paint off as it went.
Oh, man.
But that taught me to be careful which vehicles I picked to move from lot to lot. But it was fun, in that 5 seconds before I saw my life flash before my eyes.
No, it wasn't nearly as harrowing, but I had a similar experience in a Challenger where I'm just like, man, it seems like she's got a little bit there. Let's just goose it a little bit. And man, did I. And we were on a narrow street, very narrow street.
No, when you're not used to driving a rear-wheel drive car and that back end swings out like that, that puts your heart in your stomach for sure. That was terrifying.
I think, Ben, do you think maybe it's because they don't have, maybe they don't like where the design is right now because they must be currently developing an electric Camaro. They must have renderings. They must have drawings, but they must not be happy with what they have at the moment. Otherwise, they would have definitely unveiled that to everybody.
You'd think, right? But you can't expect that the next Camaro is going to be like a complete departure. That wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
And maybe they're, taking it in a completely different direction that we have no idea, it's gonna be a hovercraft. But I think it just speaks to them. Yeah, maybe just not having, but it's weird to announce that because they're still going to be rolling off the line. I think into next year, right? Yeah. And so maybe they're kind of, I don't know, just trying to get in the news cycle and get people thinking about Camaro again. And
okay, it's not like how they keep killing, like VW keeps killing the Beetle. Just like, never again. Never again.
Well, and let's be honest, this is also part promotions, right? They can push the last year and stuff. Other side note, did you guys look up what Camaro means?
No, I didn't know.
It actually means, it's French. It actually means friend, pal,
or
comrade.
Man, everyone
nice.
I knew that drove Camaros, I didn't want to be my friend.
Just a bunch of Camaros doing a podcast.
Yeah.
That's nice.
The three Camaros. All right. Well, Stephanie Brindley, who's the associate director with S&P Global Mobility, says that the new Camaro will most definitely be electric. Just a reminder that GM plans to sell only electric passenger vehicles worldwide by 2035. And then a bit of history, because I didn't know this. The Camaro was first introduced in 1966, as I said before, 2 years after Ford's Mustang kind of just blew up on the scene. Probably a poor choice of words there. GM retired the Camaro nameplate in 2002, which I had no recollection of. Do you remember when they retired it, Jeff?
No, I didn't realize that. I know it was a big sort of redesign relaunch right around Ben and I were talking about the Transformer movies.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it didn't come back until 2010, hoping to kind of bring back some of those old enthusiasts and attract some younger buyers. And, Ben, to your point about some of the sales, it looks like maybe they didn't attract as many people as they were looking to find.
Yeah, it definitely. It started out strong and then kind of tailed off pretty sharply from there. And so I don't know if it's maybe the design is not appealing. Like when we were when I was looking at this story beforehand, I was like, I'm going to look into some classic like Hollywood Camaros.
Yeah.
And everyone on the list was like, a 70s or
gotcha.
earlier,
A
classic Camaro. And the only one on the list was, that was more of a modern body style is the Bumblebee.
Was it Bumblebee? Okay.
Yeah, it was Bumblebee, and it was like yellow. I don't know.
Those mid 80s, late 80s Z28s, though, those were, when I was in high school, like that is what everybody was looking for, especially if you could find one with T-tops.
Yeah.
That was it.
Man, talk about a failure in branding. I watched that entire Bumblebee movie, didn't know it was a Camaro. Missed opportunity. All right. And time I'd like back. Now, our next most popular story, EVs not as sustainable as advertised. Well, at least not yet. When an EV is in a collision, even a minor one, insurance companies write them off as a total loss. And a lot of them are winding up in salvage yards. A new report from Reuters looked into EV salvage sales in the US and Europe and found a lot of EVs from major automakers. Most of the vehicles had low miles. The biggest problem seems to be the high-priced battery, which is about half of an EV's cost. In some brands, like Tesla, the battery packs are actually a part of the car's structure, which helps cut down on weight and cost. It also makes them near impossible to repair. For example, it takes a mechanic 314 steps to remove a Tesla battery, including taking out most of the interior and the floor. While the batteries are recyclable, part of the problem is that we also just don't have many recyclers that are in business yet. Many young EVs are already in the junkyard, but we don't have the critical mass of end-of-life batteries to make battery recycling commercially viable. Ben, looking at this story, first of all, I definitely had some reservations in terms of the angle to take on it, because there are just so many chest beaters out there saying, we knew it! EVs aren't going to work. But I hope that the take home from this is that everything seems to be headed in the right direction. We're just not at critical mass.
Right. Yeah. Like to use a really old timey idiom, is this a case of putting the cart before the horse, or is it more just kind of like a relatively new automotive ecosystem that's seeing different business segments mature at different speeds?
Gotcha.
And that seems like it's the case. I mean, it's not like we should slow down on EV development just because recycling isn't in place quite yet, or up to a same level, because things will even out at some point.
No, I thought you were going to update the idiom. I thought you were going to be like, is this more of putting the cart before the horse, or is this, more of installing the charger before you buy the car? I was like, here it comes.
Oh man, that would have been good.
But it looks like we are kind of really getting ramped up when it comes to installing this infrastructure, and creating an actual business model for some of these companies to operate. Jeff, when you looked at this, first of all, were you an EV chest thumper saying, I knew it? Good thing Dodge is the only one staying in the combustion engine business because they're going to kill it.
No, I think a lot of this stuff are things that people who are close to the EV scene really understood the technology. They knew about these I don't even want to call them issues, just realities of this marketplace of electric vehicles. So this isn't new, but it is becoming more part of the social dialogue now because electric vehicles are more popular. Yeah. The reality is and you guys have alluded to this, there was 10 million electric vehicles sold last year. Not all of them were crashed. Not all of them are sitting in scrap yards. We don't have 10 million batteries sitting out there without a home. But it is something that we need to scale up for. But there's companies coming about all the time to do this. I was just talking to one, Aqua Metals. They're just basically have a completely different type of process, a completely different approach. They just opened a new facility in December in Nevada. And part of the issue that they're running into is not enough stuff to work with, not enough raw material to deal with. Because as you mentioned, once they scrap the vehicle, it's a process getting that battery out of it. So that's one of the things that we need to work through. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
There's money in that our battery. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So we'll
It's
figure
easier to
that
take
out.
it out of the battery than it is the ground.
And especially with the fact that and especially with the fact that they're scrapping the whole car. You mentioned it with the insurance companies. If there's a ding in that thing, they're totaling it.
Yeah.
And sending it out. So I would almost think that would make it, from a logistics perspective, almost easier, because you're basically just saying, here's the car, take the battery out. And that's, I think, going to open up other opportunities for scrap and recycling as well, in terms of just consolidating a lot of these operations. You guys said it. It's just taking the realities of this market, figuring stuff out, because it's going to take a different approach. Just like manufacturing them did, just like sourcing materials will, so is the recycling.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
And competitors like GM and Ford are working to improve repairability in future models. Really, that was the one thing for me that was the most troubling, was the repairability. So Sandy Monroe of Michigan's Monroe and Associates performs EV teardowns. And he says Tesla's batteries have, quote, zero repairability. This was all in that Reuters report. He says a Tesla structural pack is going straight into the grinder. And that's where, that's where when we talk about EVs trying to help, fix the world's problems, that there's still a lot of room to grow. A few EV recyclers have set up shop in the U.S. One is called Li-Cycle that has a $485 million plant in Rochester, New York. And then there's Redwood Materials, which has more than $700 million in backing and is run by a former Tesla exec who claims to have a plan to recycle up to 95% of lithium-ion batteries. So, all about getting that ramped up. And Jeff, I wanted to get your thoughts on this because Redwood recently received about $2 billion from the Department of Energy to help ramp up construction. And, a sizable loan from the Department of Energy to a former Tesla exec. I feel like I've read from that playbook before.
Yeah, that could be interesting. This individual's last name is not Musk, though. Is that correct?
No. It's like Don Dusk.
The relationship might be a little, different, as long as it's not a family member of Elon. I think this is a government agency seeing the benefits and not wanting some of these early challenges or, again, realities of the marketplace, setting things back. We have culturally sort of embraced the fact that we are moving forward with EVs, okay? All the automakers are in. State legislation, federal legislation is all supporting it. We're putting in infrastructure for more charging stations. We've really gotten behind this, but it's been at a very deliberate pace.
Yep.
So when you look at the recycling portion of it, which is sort of the last mile, if you will, in terms of embracing this technology, it makes sense where we're going and how we'll get there, but it's going to need a boost like that from a government agency to get the ball moving in some cases. $2 billion's a lot.
$2 billion's a lot, but the government, this is not abnormal for the government to prop up where there are bottlenecks in a fledgling industry for the government to come in and say, okay, this is where we're going. Here's a loan or here's money to kind of scale it. All right, our most popular story this week, Rivian tells remote workers to relocate. Rivian Automotive is moving its manufacturing engineering team in-house. The company needs to ramp up production. According to a report from the Wall Street Journal, the automaker will likely make an announcement soon regarding the reorganization. The move will see a large portion of the engineering team remotely working on the company's manufacturing efforts, relocate to Rivian's factory in Normal, Illinois, or its headquarters in Irvine, California. During the pandemic, the company hired all the engineering talent that it could find, despite their location. But now, they kind of find themselves trying to unify the staff. Still, many workers don't seem to be on board with it. One source said that a few dozen employees have already told the company that they're not moving. Rivian plans to offer severance to those who won't make the move and bring on new talent. Jeff, is it just inevitable that when you want to kind of restructure the business, you understand some people aren't going to come on board? I mean, it just seems that Rivian's kind of in a hard spot right now because they need to ramp up manufacturing. It makes sense to me to want to get engineering closer to manufacturing, but you can't tell an engineering staff around the U.S. that all of a sudden you got to be in one location and expect them all to come.
Yeah, sort of an odd dynamic. We knew at some point the pandemic was going to end, right?
Yeah.
So they must have known long term, or they didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe they did not envision some of these production issues that they are starting to encounter, that they need to bring more of these engineers in house.
Oh,
okay.
so you're thinking like they thought they could solve the problem and just maybe not need them anymore?
Well, let me put it to you this way, David. You're the CEO of Rivian. Okay. Thanks to, I believe, the 7th largest IPO on record, you've got about $18 billion in the bank. All right, that you can invest in getting these vehicles up and running by. They're shooting for 2024, I believe.
Okay.
You got the Amazon contract. You've got the panel of the Today in Manufacturing podcast singing your praises and really saying that this could be the EV company that makes it. But then, you start running into some problems. Some batteries start catching on fire. You start burning through that $12 billion at about 6 a year. Yeah. And you're looking long term and you're going, oh boy, this is getting expensive. You also see a stock price that during the IPO was selling at $78 a share, and that is now down to about $15 a share. You need to make some head cut counts. Okay, head cut counts. Yeah, head count cuts.
Yeah,
there we go.
Sounded right.
There we go.
Yeah, you had all the right letters in there.
Head cuts.
Head cuts. I am a hardcore CEO.
Yeah, jeez.
You're not just so you need to reduce your workforce. Let's put it that way. But what you don't need is some bad headlines. You don't need to be saying, hey, we're going to reduce our engineering staff by 10%. So what you do is you say, we need you guys to come into the office. Yeah. This could be a way for them to maybe cut some of the individuals that they don't need anymore or that they have to cut because they are losing significant amount of money out of the coffers when they don't have a vehicle on the streets yet. Yeah. It could be a subtle way of sort of massaging some of that stuff to save some money is one of the things that I'm thinking of, especially because, like I said, making a car has all of a sudden become a lot more difficult. Yeah.
See, I don't know because they mentioned how they want to replace them all with new talents. And really, the success of Rivian kind of hinges on that engineering talent right now, right? Like there are engineers that are going to make manufacturing either in production, either succeed or fail. And so I don't know. I think, Ben, does it seem risky to you that all of a sudden they could be severing relationships with all these with all this engineering talent, especially when they might not have a plan in terms of replacing them in 2 locations?
Yeah, it seems like a huge risk. And I mean, just to kind of applaud the design engineering team at Rivian, they really have come up with a fairly recognizable vehicle even early on. I mean, a Rivian when you see one. Yeah. And it's barely gotten off the ground, so it seems very short-sighted to already be talking about, sending off some of your design team. Also, it's just counterintuitive to have a remote work structure and then ask people to relocate. I thought that was the whole idea of remote work, that you can do it from anywhere, right? Yeah. Like I can spend a month on a submarine and still do my job as long as there's Wi-Fi, right?
Yes, you're going to need, you'll have to be docked, I assume, if you're under the water, maybe a heck of a booster.
We'll figure it out because I want to do this. Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal to me. So, right? Yeah, hopefully you won't stand in my way of my submarine dreams. But
not at all.
Also, asking somebody to relocate from where they live is a huge deal. A lot of these people have families; they don't want to leave, right? And then this is going to sound bad, and apologies ahead of time to Normal, Illinois, but if I don't want to leave my home, for work, and I don't think I want to go to Normal, Illinois either. The other option I think is Irvine, California, right? Right. And that's it's kind of a limited group of things to choose from.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all,
I don't know. Did it sound bad?
I've never been. No, I don't think it sounds bad at all. I think a lot of people echoed the same sentiment where it's just like, especially people on the website that were like, California or Illinois, how about neither? I want neither of those things.
I'm looking it up. It's sunny and 65 in Normal, Illinois right now. So I don't know.
I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure with a company like this, it's a growing community. So there are a lot of options, a lot of money probably going into the school system, probably a great place to raise a family.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it comes to uprooting your family.
You guys are backpedaling really, really well.
You're just standing there.
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could help.
I am not going to bash Normal, Illinois.
No, I think it is. I think this is just a reality, a production reality that all of a sudden they are running into problems with. Because you're right, the design they nailed. We've talked about it previously on the podcast. When a truck drives by and it kind of turns your head, it is kind of always a Rivian, because they've really nailed that. But until they get production figured out, they are kind of on the hot seat. They talked about. Where was it? What is it? Scaringe. He said part of the problem is that Rivian is making far fewer vehicles than its factory is designed to. So these are growing pains at $1 billion level. And it reminded me of some of my factory experience where the machinists were right next to the mold makers. The mold makers were right next to the injection molding facility, and problems got figured out a whole lot faster and more efficiently in person because you're kind of not playing telephone. And I understand the allure of trying to get the best talent that you can from all corners of the earth, right? But there comes a reality of working together as a cohesive team, and there are problems that come up in the manufacturing process that you just can't figure out via Slack, And I had mentioned the comment section because it just really fired people up. One person in particular said, Rivian couldn't afford to get me to move to California or Illinois. I had mentioned in this piece about how engineers are in high demand right now. He mentioned engineers can find other jobs in much better areas closer to where they live. Yeah. And I mean, Rivian is going to have a hard time, bringing all that talent to Irvine and Normal. But, maybe to Jeff's point, it's all part of a grand plan to cut costs. You had mentioned Rivian's cash problem, and I just wanted to shine a little bit more of a light on that, Jeff, because the company, according to the Wall Street Journal, spent $6.6 billion in cash just last year. Yep. At the end of the year, it had $11.6 billion left, but then it raised another $1.5 billion. It's nice to have rich friends. The company says it has enough runway to fund operations through 2025, but the company is expected to spend another $6 billion this year. And you've got to figure out this production problem. You got to figure out how to use this factory to the best of its ability. Otherwise, that $13.1 billion that you have right now is going to go fast.
That's my point.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we move on to In Case You Missed It, we have another word from our sponsor, BigCommerce. And we're back. And just a reminder that BigCommerce provides modern e-commerce technology that works with your existing systems. ERP, OMS, CRM, no problem. Whatever existing business tools and technologies you use today, BigCommerce can integrate using pre-built one-click integrations or customize your automation with its APIs. Make the move to BigCommerce today. Well, let's move on to In Case You Missed It. The stories, maybe not as popular on our websites, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. I'll go first because the story I picked could not just make a big impact on the industry, but pretty much everything. So I chose this story.
You didn't overhype that at all.
Not overhyping it at all. I'm trying to draw you closer.
Every single thing you do, every single minute, this story impacts.
It does, though.
Nothing will be the same.
Definitely, your stories are probably really important, too.
In a world.
So I chose, in a world with room temperature superconductors, we could revolutionize electronics. Superconductors, you may or may not know, make great electronics, but to make them work, you need low temperature and really high pressures. Well, researchers at the University of Rochester have created a new material that is a superconductor at room temperature. If the material proves reliable and cheap enough to mass produce, it could change the electronics industry forever. We're talking about everything. I mean, they're putting electronics in clothing now, so everything. A superconductor is a material that conducts direct current without encountering any electrical resistance. Until now, superconductors had to be cooled to extremely low temperatures, close to absolute zero. Now, these room temperature superconductors don't need special equipment to cool them. This would mean MRIs would become much less expensive to operate. The electrical power grid will be at least 20% more efficient. Maglev trains could operate over longer distances at lower costs. Computers would run faster with orders of magnitude lower power consumption. You know, cats and dogs living together in harmony, mass hysteria. Everything's going to be great. Now, all we need to do is prove out that the material is reliable and cheap enough when mass produced, and these researchers will change the electronics industry forever. I think it's pretty self-explanatory as to why I chose this article. But Ben, when I first read it, it was one of those where I was like, okay, this is kind of a, more of a tech piece, kind of not going to be as popular, but I bet it's kind of a big deal. And then as I read it, and it's a longer piece, I highly recommend people check out the link in the description. It's crazy how many different industries and parts of your life this would touch in terms of making things, better.
Yeah, and room temperature, right? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? I mean,
so that means it won't take the extreme power to bring superconductors to extreme low temperatures, and also operate under extremely high pressures. So basically, all the power that it takes to make them work now, you wouldn't need.
So is this a hypothetical, or is this something that they've developed already?
This is a material that they've developed already. Mm-hmm. Now it's kind of proof of concept, making sure that A, we can make a bunch of it, mm-hmm. and B, it works like it's supposed to.
Okay.
So, it's the standard type of fare that I like to share from studies that come out of universities, because, Jeff, at a base level, if we could just make it easier and cheaper to get into an MRI, I might know a little more about what's going on with me structurally day to day.
All those applications are incredibly interesting. Even just when you think about the laptop computer. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it wasn't burning your legs.
Yeah. Oh, true.
When you're using it. The other thing I thought about it immediately too is we have all of these headlines right now about these hugely expensive investments in chip production facilities.
Correct.
And if you have this type of dynamic, that's going to cut a huge chunk out of the cost in building those factories. Mm-hmm. If you don't have to worry so much about the environment, obviously there's still a lot of clean room considerations. That isn't going away. Yeah. But when you don't have to worry about the amount of water that you're going to need and all the cooling infrastructure, mm-hmm. that's a huge deal. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at the applications as well in terms of less energy consumption, this is, you didn't undersell. This impacts everything.
Yeah. So keep up the good work, University of Rochester, and check in from time to time. Let us know how it's going. Ben, what is your In Case You Missed It this week?
My In Case You Missed It is the 5 least essential Doodads on Nissan's new concept. It was last week Nissan showed off a new prototype sedan designed for contemporary lifestyles. It's modeled after the Skyline, and it looks great. And it is absolutely packed with doodads, which is a really fun word to say. I recommend it. And a lot of these gadgets look like they could be really useful. Like there's a sliding table that pops up and folds out from the center console. There's a bottle heater built into the cup holder, which is great for baby's milk. But there are flat folding seats for naps. There's all-in-one control buttons kind of placed throughout the cabin. There's storage in the headrests. Oh, okay. There's a 100-volt outlet on one of the side view mirrors. There's a portable battery. It's got all kinds of stuff. But it also, I think because of the volume of gadgets that or doodads,
Yeah.
doodads, if you will, doodads. Because of the volume, there's bound to be a few kind of swings and misses.
Less essential.
Yeah. And some of them are a little confusing. And I wanted to highlight one specifically, and it's the side view mirror dustbin, which just seems sort of weird and possibly dangerous to me. It's kind of a side view mirror, and it's hinged on the top, opens, and then there's maybe room for a little bit of garbage in there, which is always better than throwing the garbage on the ground. But this just seems like it could pop open while you're driving, shooting garbage and whatever else out of your side view mirror at other drivers. I'm just kind of wondering, would either of you consistently use a tiny garbage can inside of your mirror if it was available?
You know where this is going. If these vehicles get popular and they know that that's an option, people are going to be walking down the street, like on the sidewalk, and be like, "Oh, Apple Core. Throw it in the side view mirror of this individual. I don't even know this guy, but thanks for taking my garbage."
Yeah.
I mean, you could see that kind of stuff going on here.
I guess, but is the person, do you convert potential litter bugs to a more responsible waste management by,
Honey, why is there a beehive attached to your side view mirror? Oh, well,
This, I will say, this part of the this specific doodad was what made me really pour into the announcement to make sure it wasn't like an Onion article. Where when I was going through this list, I just thought, there's no way these are real. And also to your point, doodads is a great word, and it just seems to bring up your day.
Yeah.
So when you're listening to it, don't just say it to yourself out loud, or like a quiet whisper. Work it into the next day. It's gonna be a better day.
I love doodads, and this car is full of them, and a lot of them could be really great. But this one maybe just not quite there yet. Somebody puts a half-eaten woolly mammoth meatball in there. That's going to be stinking up the entire parking lot, and you're going to have to answer for it.
You think someone's gonna ditch a $500 worth of woolly mammoth meatball?
Once they scale production, it's going to be so every day. Yeah, you're going to have 4 of them in your meatball sub, and you're going to be like, I can't finish this.
That's what you're gonna get at IKEA.
Yeah.
You're gonna switch it to meatball. Mammoth meatballs.
This is too much woolly mammoth for me.
I definitely, the outlet that popped out of the side view mirror, that was one that I was like, I could use that all the time.
That's pretty cool.
And just because when you run equipment using plugging it into your battery, you see all those cords running out the window.
Yeah. For the chili cook-off?
For the chili cook-off, this
Incredible.
would be huge.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Game changer.
Could you imagine the side view mirror dustbin after the chili cook-off though? Oh my God. It would just burn the car. I've got to say, I got to give Nissan a little bit of credit for the actors that they hired for the commercial and dancers, because they were just very excited to be placing the trash in the dustbin, and believable.
Yeah,
it was believable that he thought that was a good idea.
Everything was amazing.
Yeah,
he almost sold me.
He was more positive than Ben on this podcast.
Well, what the umbrella that you would just kick out of place that's in your door panel all the time. It was I don't know. It was uplifting, regardless of how ready for prime time some of these doodads might be. Jeff, do you see any sort of I don't know who commented it, but somebody said trash mirror equals don't dads. And thank you. Thank you for being a part of this podcast. Don't ever change. Jeff, your thoughts on these doodads?
I just got that. That's fantastic.
And as to whether or not any of these could be seen in a future car anytime soon.
Well, first, when I was watching the video, and highly recommend it, watch it, no offense, Ben, with the sound off. Just so you can appreciate this actor. Like, read it and just watch this guy. Don't you just got to watch this model or actor or whomever in this thing just get so fired up about all of this stuff. What was going through my head actually was like the movie Step Brothers, when they're talking about so much room for activities. Because like he was sitting there just like pulling out stuff here. I can set my laptop here and like set my phone here. I can just do everything. Yeah. This thing's amazing.
I love when it's blanket storage in the video and he's like, what? Like, I think that's just storage, but
So watch
sure.
it twice, once with Ben telling the story, and then once where you can just focus on this individual because he earned his money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's they happily handed over that check just like, you know what? You did what we asked you for and you got after it.
Crushed it.
Jeff, what's your in case you missed it this week?
I'm going to bring us down with a more negative story. Can I do that? Just
Definitely.
crush all the positive vibes here.
I guess.
I picked a easy new guy. I picked a story. It was a new California law penalizes oil companies for making too much money. And this one caught my eye for a couple reasons because about a month ago we ran a story entitled Bill Penalizing Oil Profits Makes Little Progress. So California's Governor Newsom pushed this one through. And basically what it was, it's got a good intention, but I'm worried about long-term impacts. So basically the California governor, during the pandemic, he saw prices going up in California to like between $6 and $8 a gallon for gas. And a lot of this was going, they estimated about $2.50 of that was going directly to the bottom line of oil companies. People don't think about it, but California is a huge oil production state in terms of, especially offshore. So they signed some legislation into act, or Governor Gavin Newsom signed it, that basically says, and it's all very loose right now. Doesn't say how much, doesn't say what the penalty is going to be, but if their profits, it's going to set up a task force essentially that's going to say when oil companies are making so much money, they're going to get fined. The thought is this way they can rein in gas prices a little bit, bring them down, and sort of control the oil companies' production levels and not take advantage and not price gouge consumers. Again, I think it's got a good motive, but where does it stop? This is the first state that's enacted this type of legislation in terms of telling a company, if you make too much money, we're going to fine you.
Yeah.
That isn't how you encourage business.
No.
That's not how you grow commerce. And this was unanimously passed. There was only one Democratic state senator who did not vote for this.
Yeah.
So it was, California has always been much more environmentally sensitive, I guess is what I would say. They're going to have no gas-powered vehicles out there. They're not going to sell any, I think, by like 2030 or 2035. So this is another step that they're taking to sort of rein in the use of oil or at least limit the profitability from it. Again, I would worry about where this goes long term.
Yeah, I definitely seemed a little extremist to me. And I understand that there are all the California stereotypes out there that you could throw with this story. But the reality is that it's, the fifth largest GDP or whatever, it's a massive part of this state, country, and a lot of things that happen in California wind up kind of forcing other states to follow suit. This one was kind of made me, I understand the reasoning behind it, right?
Yeah.
But it's something that is great in maybe not great in practice, but has a great thought behind it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys are saying. It seems punitive in a way that's counterproductive. You're just talking about making money, and there's demand for your product. That shouldn't be where you start in terms of trying to limit production. Stop selling people things when they want them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, it kind of goes against like everything that the country is founded on. It's like make your money where you can and gouge them until it's illegal. No, Jeff, and I was honestly, as we were putting together the planning for this podcast, every once in a while when I'm picking in case you have missed it, I try and guess what yours is going to be. And this was in my top 3. I was just like, I don't think you can walk away from that one.
I can't. And you know why? I mean, all the reasons are there. Again, when you look, and one of the things I think that bothers me too is right now it's so loose. Basically, they're setting up, for lack of a better word, a task force or a group or an industry group that's going to look at this and say, hey, when they start making too much money, we don't know what that is yet.
Yeah.
So oil companies, you can't work around this.
Yeah.
So it's so indiscriminate as well in terms of what that level of profitability is and what the quote unquote fine is going to be for hitting it.
Yeah.
At least give them some parameters to work within.
Yeah.
If you're going to do this.
Well, and very recently, we've seen people stop bluffing about leaving California and leaving California. Businesses have left because it is just no longer hospitable to do business there. And I mean, a lot of people on the websites and just in the industry in general, they kind of said the same thing where if you start penalizing, Ben, to your point, if you start penalizing people for making too much money, they're going to go do it somewhere else. It's not like they're going to say, you know what? Okay, you're right. Enough is enough. Like my swimming pool full of gold coins was already full anyways, and the cost of transporting it to and from just wasn't worth it.
Yeah, all they're going to do is put their operation someplace else. They'll still refine. They'll still draw the oil out of the earth there.
Yeah.
They'll just refine it someplace else.
All right. Well, you're right, Jeff. Definitely brought us down a
right.
little bit. But
I'm right. Oh, I thought we could just stop there. I'm right. Oh, all right.
But we will move on to final thoughts where we will possibly find some uplifting things there. But I guess maybe I'll change mine just to kind of really cinch it down.
Drop the hammer.
Yeah. Ben, what are your final thoughts this week?
Okay, my final thoughts are liquid trees. According
Just
to
stop there.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just picturing them.
What if?
According to World Biomarket Insights, the Serbian scientists have created something they're calling liquid trees, and it's being used as part of an installation called Liquid 3, which consists of a large water tank filled with microalgae. And the hope is that this device or installation or contraption or doodad,
if you
will clean the air by binding carbon dioxide and producing oxygen through photosynthesis. I think it's a fascinating and novel approach that also happens to be a little bit dystopian.
Definitely.
And the Twitter jokes yesterday were very good. Someone called it boneless trees, and another user said that they were going to crash their car through it or crash into it to replenish their car's health. It was just, and I get why people are piling up on this because it does look kind of dystopian. Like we don't need trees when we have this huge fish tank full of algae. Right. But I think it's more of a, just a novel approach, and where it's placed is actually very smoggy. They're trying to address air pollution like at the site of it, and I don't think these researchers are going to try to replace trees. That would be a very unpopular thing to do. Trees are good. I think we can all agree here. Trees are nice. We like them.
Yeah,
Ben, going out on a limb
going pro tree on the podcast.
Yep, I'm gonna cap this off with the hot take. Trees are good, and this is also good, and I think there's room for both of them.
More positive vibes.
Yeah, love it, man. Meatballs, Camaros, algae tanks.
When we talk about dystopian landscape, when you see, when people's hands are forced, you see a lot of innovation come out. But, with some of that innovation, I've said it before, like they can't all be winners, and when you see people try to solve issues with deforestation, I remember this one concept that was essentially a massive structure. It was a huge vertical farm, and it was, 100 stories tall, and each row had trees. I'm like, okay, can we not look at the need for something like this or the need for something like a liquid tree and maybe start asking some harder questions in the other direction? Just like, okay, hold on a second. I like the idea. Liquid trees, great. Why do we need these again? Our direct impact. Okay, you know what? How about we just tweet? We'll change a few more of the dials rather than green-lighting liquid trees.
Yeah, it's like, what happens to an aquarium when you don't clean it? What if that was trees?
What if that saved the world? Is that how this started? Was this some guy trying to figure out what his thesis was going to be, and he had a dirty fish tank in his room, and he's just like, that's a liquid tree right there.
I mean, that's what it looks like, man.
Well, I mean, when it comes to dirty fish tanks, I am looking forward to the change of seasons. Just get my koi and goldfish out of the tank in the garage and into the pond. It's a serene respite for me, regardless of the back-breaking labor it takes to get all 100 gallons of fish from one to the other.
Did you lose any this winter?
We lost one. But it was one that I knew was on the way out, might not make the winter. When there was a transition, it was, kind of borrowing from The Departed a little bit. It kind of floated funny. And every once in a while, it would just be like, It's kind of floating funny again, but made it the better part of the winter. Other than that, they all did. My other final thought is, Ben, thank you very much for joining us this week. Thought you crushed it. Always appreciate your insights. And I mean, if we could add meatball beat to your lists of like trash and
it's right up there with trash. Talking robot.
Robots. If we could get
forced monkey labor.
Yeah, forced monkey labor is the other one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we could add meatball beats to that, just to keep us up on what's going on.
Yeah, I'd be happy to be there. Yeah. Count on me for continued meatball coverage.
And Anna, I hope everything's going great with the vacation and hope to see you again soon. Jeff, what is your final thought this week?
Final thoughts. So my kids were on spring break this week, and my wife took two of our daughters just like away, basically. They went up to the Twin Cities, kind of hung around and stuff, and it was so weird to be in a house by myself for that long. Yeah. You always talk about the quiet, like when you're ice fishing or something like that, how it's almost unnerving. The first day was really cool because it's like, man, just whatever I want to do. After that, it got weird. Yeah. It did. So if I was off a couple of days, in the office, just like, what's up with Jeff? It was just, I was in a weird place because it was so quiet.
It was the isolation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool for a little while.
Yeah.
So.
No, I get that.
Interesting.
I get that when we're up at the cottage and it's quiet in the winter. You feel serene for a little bit. And then, I know I've said it before, but then you start really relating to Jack Nicholson in The Shining. You're like, okay.
I didn't go that far. I was not quite there.
He's been dragging this axe around all week. Scary. Do we have a podcast poll, or how did the last one turn out? Last week's.
Yeah, last week we talked about which of the following would have the biggest impact on deciding potentially to not join a company, and we had some really cool feedback here. I want to go through some of the responses. Mark, longtime listener, frequent commenter, said he'd be leery of any company that failed to have a transition plan around green technology or products. So he went with the bucking industry technology trends response. We also had some new individuals reach out and leave comments. Claire said companies need to make tough decisions in this difficult market. So the first two show that the company is trying. If a company learns from safety mishaps, this shows a company is trying. But if a company is refusing to move forward based on technology, shows a short-sighted view and will likely see the end of that company in the near future. So again, she went the technology route. Lisa also took this response. She said she worked at the same company for 40 years and watched them grow, became one of the big, started this company, grow from small to one of the largest in the industry. Their focus has always been on giving customers what they need when they want it at a competitive price. If a company falls behind in the technology that helps their industry improve and become more efficient, they'll be left behind and no customers to serve. The most popular response was actually plant closures based on consolidation and efficiency. I think Chris here sums it up pretty well. He says, plant consolidation and efficiency is manufacturing code for we're in deep and need more capital. So the most popular response there, again, was plant-based closures. Those would be the biggest red flag, essentially, for people picking a place to go.
No, I definitely, if you're in the market and you see that they're closing plants, you can't feel good about that.
No, understandable. I also wanted to read a comment. Marina chimed in too. She was talking about, you had the story about the VW engineers taking kickbacks.
Oh, Mercedes-Benz.
Mercedes-Benz, excuse me. She said she works in pharma and has purchasing power, and it's terrifying to think that someone would forget a best fit supplier in exchange for self-serving purpose. Anyone placing IOs for kickbacks is doing a major disservice to their coworkers and the end consumer, especially if it's life-saving drugs. So she had some feedback there. Appreciate everyone responding.
But Marina, what if you had a Lamborghini?
I think she's pretty focused there, David.
No, that's good.
Stop being the devil on her shoulder.
I don't want to be the devil on the shoulder. Everyone be good to each other. That's just, and then the world will be better.
Learn from Ben.
Yeah.
More positive.
Yeah.
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 If meatballs and liquid trees.
If everyone's nicer.
Fewer kickbacks and Lamborghinis.
Fewer kickbacks, and we need less liquid trees.
All right. Poll question for next week. Borrowing off of the number one story from this week's podcast, if you were a remote worker, and unlike Rivian, you weren't forced, but you were asked to transition to in-office full-time, what would it take to really maybe sway you to be cool with that? Mm-hmm. Okay? What are some of the different perks or benefits that they could offer? So which of these would make you feel comfortable or willing to transition to in-office as opposed to remote? What if they paid for travel in terms of like your mileage coming to and from? Maybe they give you a pay raise, maybe some free lunch, bring in some pizza. How about more vacation or even childcare support?
Oh, God.
Or is there something we missed?
Yeah.
So let us know which of those. I'd be interested to hear. Again, if you're transitioning from remote to in-office, what would it take to sway you to come on board and get into the office instead of working from home?
No, what sort of incentive? That makes a lot of sense, because if you've ever been, I thought more of in terms of being poached, or if you've ever been approached by somebody else trying to bring you on to from another company, you kind of expect that maybe some of these allowances or raises, like some of these are going to be a part of a role, kind of sweetening the deal. Not just like, oh, it sounds good to you. Okay, do the exact same thing that everybody else sounds. Just send us your resume. It's like, whoa. You wanted me, man. Like, so I'm kind of interested to see how this pans out. And if free lunch wins, I don't even know where to go.
Yeah, I don't want to influence answers or anything like that, but one of these looks pretty good. I think one of them could take care of a lot of the other ones.
All right.
I actually think there's a sleeper in here.
Okay.
As far as which one I think it's going to be.
Ooh, is it naps? Is it legitimate sleep?
I mean, maybe that's the option.
Oh, that's my
I
other.
need a nap from 1:30 to 3:30.
I would like a nap pod under my desk.
Comfy nap nook.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Ben at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Make sure to subscribe to our daily newsletters so you can get it delivered to your inbox first. And join us at IN Magazine on YouTube so you can join us live and in the live chat and give us little gems like don't dads. Say doodads tomorrow. It'll make you happier. All right. Well, for Jeff Reinke and Ben Munson, I'm David Mantee. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.